am a 39 years old male, and I lost my late wife 6 years ago. I have a 16-year-old son, Daniel, and I recently got engaged to my fiancé of 2 years. Her mom and I aren't on good terms because of how she behaves. She's a controlling, self-centered, Dolly Parton wannabe. I learned to ignore, but she's been annoying Daniel and criticizing his personality regularly. He's a private kid and still hasn't gotten used to the new family dynamic, but he's in therapy and is doing fine. She keeps diagnosing him left and right, calling him antisocial, autistic and other crap. Fact is, Daniel is a shy, well-mannered kid, but people confuse that with being antisocial. Mother-in-law tried several times to force Daniel to open up by embarrassing him with personal questions on family dinners and test his personality type. I've realized the effect her behavior had on Daniel, so I gave him the choice to no longer be in the same room / house as mother-in-law, and he appreciated this a lot. Mother-in-law didn't like that Daniel kept his distance and no longer visits and kept ing about how spoiled he will become for her daughter to deal with. I told her to stop bringing it up, but she cried, "I'm just doing this for Danny." Last week she visited unexpectedly, wanting to say hi to Daniel. After Daniel greeted her, he went into the bathroom and she went into the living room with my fiancé. I was in my bedroom when Daniel came and said his journal was gone. We looked for it but didn't find it. I asked my fiancé, who was alone in the kitchen, but didn't see it. I paused for a second to ask where mother-in-law was. My fiancé said in the living room, but I saw her coming down the stairs. I asked where she was. She said the bathroom. I saw her purse in hand, so I bluntly asked if she took Daniel's journal. She looked offended and called for my fiancé when I insisted to see inside her purse. She wanted to leave, but I didn't let her. Fiancé told me to stop it, but I insisted, and the journal was there. Mother-in-law tried to explain this was her only chance to get to know Daniel better because she cares about him. I blew up at her and berated her for stealing from my son and told her she's banned from my house for the stunt she pulled. She argued with me, then left. My fiancé apologized for her but said banning her from the house was over the top. It backlashed and father-in-law argued and hoped his daughter realizes how I am and call off the wedding for refusing to apologize to Mil. Fiancé said her family won't come to the wedding till I reconcile with her mom and cancel the ban, but I won't let my son be disrespected in his own house and asked my fiancé to understand. I'm refusing to reconcile but am aware this could ruin my relationship with all my in-laws, not just mother-in-law, and my fiancé thinks I'm selfish to cause drama. When I was 19 and a sophomore in college, I had a boyfriend I thought I really loved. Looking back, maybe it was just teenage puppy love infatuation. Not sure, but I guess it's not important. I know I'm very biased and what I want is what's best for my daughter, but I think my feelings are getting in the way of that. I had been with Tom for about 8 months at that point. He was on the baseball team and very popular. But one day I discovered I was pregnant and told Tom. He freaked out and got super pissed. He demanded I get an abortion, said he would not stay with me otherwise. He did offer to pay the full expenses of it though. So I went to the clinic and I couldn't do it. I'm very pro-choice and told myself the logical thing to do would be to have an abortion. But when it came down to it, I just couldn't do it. I admit part of it was that I was afraid, but I also felt an attachment for my baby. The thought of getting rid of him / her made me feel like throwing up. So I told Tom that I did love him and I wasn't trying to trap him, but I simply couldn't have an abortion. Maybe we could look into adoption, but abortion was out. Tom said he had never loved me, and while I was fun, I was now causing him too much trouble for him to bother with me anymore. And I was right, I wasn't going to trap him. He said I was free to choose to keep the baby, and he was free to choose to have nothing to do with me or it, and to not even think of trying to get child support from him. I won't go into details, but Tom made it clear he would make life as miserable as possible for me if I tried to contact him again, get child support, etc. Maybe it was wrong to do, but I figured all that trouble and drama just wasn't worth it and I would make my own way. I was, however, devastated and completely heartbroken. I admit it really me up. I never spoke with or saw Tom again. I did consider adoption, but in the end, long story short, I chose to keep my child. Faith is 4 now. It's been a long and hard road, but I graduated college and got a job. We live in a tiny apartment and finances are tight, but we make do. I love Faith like crazy and I do not regret the choice to keep her whatsoever. She makes me a better person and we have a good life. However, 3 days ago I received a letter in the mail. It was from Tom. Inside the envelope was a letter and a check for $3,000. This is what the letter said: Vika, I know this is coming out of nowhere and I'm sorry, but I didn't know a better way to do this. I am so sorry for how I acted 5 years ago. I was selfish and a complete fool. I know that doesn't begin to cover it. These past 5 years have really had an effect on me. I got a job at Restraint. I started hanging out with different people. Good people instead of college jocks. I know I ran from my responsibility and I treated you with callous cruelty. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to make it right. Here is a check for $3,000 for Faith. I know that doesn't begin to cover what her expenditures have been, but I wanted to show I am serious about what I'm about to say. I want to be a part of our daughter's life. I will go as slow as you like. I would very much like to set up regular child support payments as well as pay off whatever back child support I owe you for the past 5 years, including hospital appointments during your pregnancy. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to meet my daughter and be a part of her life in whatever way I can. I want to help her and I want to help you and start making up for the terrible way I acted. Here is my contact information. I am willing to do what you ask of me. Thank you for your time. Tom. I was blown away. I'm also beyond pissed off. I'm thinking of the pregnancy I had to deal with after getting dumped like that. Exams and papers I had to write. Giving birth to her on my own. The late night feedings, all the diaper changes, the constant crying. Trying to afford clothes to keep Faith warm during the winter as she grew while also making sure she didn't go hungry, the tantrums. The first steps, first words, the potty training. He wasn't there for any of that, and now he just wants to come waltzing into her life like nothing happened. After doing whatever he felt like now that Faith is out of the unfunny baby years and she's a well-behaved child who can now carry on a conversation and knows how to use toilet and doesn't wake up every 2 hours. Faith has started asking questions like, where is her daddy? How come she doesn't have a daddy? And I've been doing my best. I've been saying mommy doesn't know where daddy is, true until now. And she doesn't have a father because daddy wasn't ready to be one when she was born. Maybe that's the wrong answer, but I am doing my absolute best. I'm thinking of how Tom hurt me and bailed when life got hard. I can't stand the thought of him doing that to Faith. She's a sweetheart and quite sensitive. She doesn't understand unkindness. She makes friends with everyone and is very innocent. I've done my best to teach her to be a calm, kind, respectful person and everyone loves her. However, I do know she needs a good male role model in her life and I do feel guilty for not having one for her. I haven't had a boyfriend or dated since Tom because all my energy and focus has been on graduating college, getting a job, and being a good mother to my daughter. I never really thought about Tom much after Faith was born, but now that I am with this intrusion into our lives, I think I hate and despise him. I want him to just go away. I wanted to not even cash the check and to tell him to take his money and shove it, but my parents and close friends reminded me that that is Faith's money and she is entitled to it, and I agree. At minimum, I want to get some child support going because Faith deserves all the financial assistance and opportunities she can get. However, I know if I get regular child support, Tom will want to be in Faith's life, and frankly, I don't want that. I don't want him to hurt her and bail when life gets hard, because it is when you have a kid. I also feel like he doesn't deserve her. 4-year-olds are a lot more fun than infants. How convenient he suddenly shows up and wants to be a dad when the hardest part is out of the way. But I honestly do want what's best for Faith. I think she deserves to have a good daddy. I just don't think Tom is. I think Faith is better off having no dad than a bad or half-assed one. She deserves the money. But am I right to take the money and not give Tom any access to my daughter? I can't stand the thought of him hurting her. The thought of dropping her off at his house where I don't have access to her makes me want to scream and run away. Am I out of line for taking Tom's money but saying that's as close as he will ever get to her? I am not convinced in the slightest he has changed. I feel like this is guilt money and I want to throw that check in the trash. But it's Faith's money, not mine. Faith and I have a good life, and I feel like Tom is going to ruin that. But is it right to keep Faith from her biological parent when he has sent the money? I hate feeling like I owe her him because of that. P.S. College boyfriend dumped me after I got pregnant and threatened to ruin my life if I tried to talk to or get child support from him. Almost 5 years later, I get a $3,000 check in the mail and a letter apologizing for what he did, and saying he wants to be a dad. I want to tell him to stay the hell away from us, but I want what's best for my child. Tom is listed as the father on the birth certificate. University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little, and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation, and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong, and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later, I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, "Hand me Spanish word, please," knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish, asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't, but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue. To which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying. My brother lost his job along with all his savings several months ago, and soon after he asked me if it would be okay if he and his wife stayed with me until they could afford their own place again. I hesitated at first, considering I only have a 1-bedroom apartment, but according to them they had no other options, so of course I invited them over and bought a blow-up mattress for the living room. For the first month things were manageable, although admittedly cramped. Then my brother told me that sleeping on the mattress was giving him back pains. So he asked if he could buy a small double bed for the living room. The living room is by far the biggest room I have, so I told him that would be fine as long as there was still room for my couch, TV, bookshelves. The living room is also connected to my kitchen in an open plan style. So I reminded my brother to leave walking space around the bed. It's now been 2 months and things have gotten a lot worse. When they first moved in, I would still use the living room every day to unwind on the couch after work. Now whenever I go in, there's a strange vibe like I'm intruding. My brother and his wife are often sitting in bed together when I go in. I always knock and stare at me pointedly until I leave. Sometimes when I sit down they will directly ask me for some alone time and say they would like the room to themselves. This came to a head yesterday when my sister-in-law messaged me with a timetable she'd made of when it would be a good time for me to use the living room. The timetable basically says that they will allow me into the room for an hour each evening, plus 20 minutes around meal times. I basically shut her down instantly and told her there was no way I'd be following the timetable since in the end it's my apartment. She sent me back a huge message with a dozen paragraphs about how my constant presence was ruining her marriage with my brother and they feel like they have no privacy. I tried to talk this over with my brother that night, but when I got home neither my brother //SIL were talking to me. So he's clearly just as pissed. Today an Amazon parcel arrived for my brother with a lock for the living room door, which I told him there's absolutely no way I will allow him to install. My brother says I'm creepy for wanting constant access to where they sleep and he's insisting on installing the lock anyway.